Now, I may be biased because they are my second army, but I do have to say, demons are looking incredibly fun in this new edition. They are the first army that to me feels like it's really embracing a brand new edition. They've got some unbelievably cool new mechanics and interactions with the new game systems, and I just think they sound like they're trying something new and they're not just rehashing the rules from 9th. They are actually sort of testing the bed and really pushing the envelope. And I know sometimes demons can be a bit hit or miss with their quote-unquote fun mechanics, but so far from this preview, these new demon rules look like they are going to be quite a bit of a winner. As usual, we start with the main rules and we get both the army and the detachment rules for the demons, and both of these are really cool. The army rule, the Shadow of Chaos, is almost like this rising tide of despair, and certain areas of the battlefield are considered to be in your Shadow of Chaos. Your deployment is always considered in it. If you control at least half the objectives in No Man's Land at the start of any phase, then No Man's Land is considered to be in it. And if you control at least half the objective markers in your enemy's deployment zone, then that area is also in your shadow. So it can be potentially a bit tricky to get, but the fact that your deployment is always in the shadow is a really big help, and getting control of half of the center field objectives shouldn't be too much of a problem as long as the game isn't going horrendously against you. So I mean, I would say having yours and No Man's Land in the Shadow of Chaos should be a fairly achievable goal for at least a good portion of the game. And then when that happens, when you are in the Shadow of Chaos, you get a couple of rules. Demonic Manifestation means that when your units take a battle shock, you add 1 to the roll, making it much easier for you to pass, and then on top of that, if you do pass, a model in your unit gains back D3 wounds, or if the unit is a battle line unit, it gains D3 models back. So you can very much get into the shadow and play the attrition game against your opponent. It will make it so much easier for your units to sit in the shadow and just fight off enemies that are trying to charge you and steal your objective much more easily now, because you will be passing battle shock that much better and also getting those models back to add a few extra attacks and of course add some more objective control for your side to count on. So in my opinion, this alone is a really good buff to have. However, it isn't just a buffing mechanic, because you also get the Demonic Terror ability, and when an enemy unit is in the Shadow of Chaos, they get a reverse style effect. So they reduce their battle shock rolls by 1, and if they fail their battle shock tests, they take D3 mortal wounds. So in the Shadow of Chaos, your units are going to be a huge deal more resistant to battle shock and just keep on respawning, whilst the enemy is going to be terrified and cowering in fear and just suffering all of this chip damage from the mortal wounds as the fight drags on. It's just, for me, super thematic for demons, and it really does give you this idea and this narrative of this endless, relentless, despairing tide of demonic energy which is slowly advancing and taking over the battlefield, and as it does, your forces get better and the enemy just gets weaker and weaker and weaker. So I would say, as far as army abilities to go, yes, it's not the easiest to have off all the time. You can't just choose to have it off. You do actually have to make an effort in the game to go and sort of get it off, especially in the midfield and the enemy's deployment, but it is still a very solid one, and when you do have it going off, it's going to give a huge amount of durability to you and cause a lot of headaches for your opponent. But the detachment ability for the demons, for their demonic incursion detachment, which is called Warp Rifts, is arguably even better. Because what this does is, when you bring a unit onto the board via Deep Strike, and it seems like all demon units are going to have Deep Strike on their datasheet, you can set them up 6 inches away from enemies rather than 9 inches, which is just huge. That is one of the most powerful rules in the game. Being able to set up deep strikes closer than you normally can is one of the most powerful things you can do in 40k, and it's going to mean you are going to have the opportunity for some incredibly reliable charges straight out of Deep Strike, with your odds of success going from around 27% at 9 inches to around 72% at that 6 inch mark, so almost 3 times as likely as making those charges in. So this really is a genuinely fantastic detachment rule, and it is really going to mean that a deep strike heavy force of demons is a very, very real and a very, very terrifying possibility in 10th edition. We also get shown another rule, which is how demons interact with the other forces of chaos, which is kind of cool. Demonic Pact means that a certain amount of your army can be made up of demons if it all has the chaos keyword. So, for example, incursion size games can have up to 250 points, strike force games can have up to 500, and so on. And it also shows off some of the other restrictions. So, World Eaters can only have Khorne demons, Thousand Suns can only have Tzeentch demons, as you would expect. It's just a really nice way to add some more fluff and variety to your Chaos armies, and I'm really glad that they've put it in this clear, concise, simple format, so you can really easily just choose a Chaos army and then know how many demons you can add, what kind of demons you can add, and just bring them along into your list to just bring some chaff if you need it, or some heavy hitting melee units if you need some bloodletters or that sort of thing. Not that World Eaters need more hard-hitting melee, but you know what I mean. As we've come to expect, we do of course get a couple of unit previews as well, and they've shown off both a Keeper of Secrets and Be'lakor today, both of whom look particularly terrifying with a great stat line and a great selection of abilities. The Keeper of Secrets still has a very solid movement of 14 inches and has jumped up to a whopping toughness 10. It's dropped down to 18 wounds instead of the 20 it has now, but it is still very, very solid, and as we kind of all expected, demon saves are now a thing of the past, so it's just back to the regular 5-up armor and 4-up invuln for this guy, which is actually a buff against melee attacks compared to his demon save, so that's a nice little bonus there. It also brings a very nice little aura buff to it. It gives friendly Slaanesh demons within 6 inches an extra AP, which will really be a golden buff in 10th edition with the lowered AP on a lot of weapons, and it also has a -1 to be hit by enemy attacks too. So it can actually still be fairly tanky despite being considered one of the 2 flimsier greater demons. And if that isn't enough either, one of the options it can take is the Shining Aegis, which also gives it a 5-up Feel No Pain. So this thing, considered one of the flimsier demons, can be toughness 10 with 18 wounds, a 4-up invuln with -1 to hit, and a 5-up Feel No Pain, which to be fair is a pretty solid stat line. It has some psychic attacks it can shoot in addition to its living whip. It can potentially do 9 strength 6 -2 AP shots with the devastating wounds rule at 18 inches, which is very much better than the current version of the power. And in melee it is also no slouch. It has 6 main attacks at strength 8, -2 AP and 3 damage, but then several more with the new extra attacks rule. And this is, as you may expect, sort of like the current Squig Jaws or Thunderwolf Cavalry Jaws that we know from now, and are basically just some extra attacks on top of your normal ones. Otherwise, if they don't have this, models have to just choose one weapon to fight with. So to take an example that was talked about a lot when he was shown off the other day, Guilliman, he can't fight with the Emperor's Sword and the Hand of Dominion. He has to choose one or the other. The Keeper, on the other hand, he can fight with its Witstealer Sword and also with its Ritual Knife and Snapping Claws. They add another 3 attacks at strength 6, -2 AP and 2 damage, and 4 attacks at strength 6, -2 and 3 damage respectively. So in total, this beastie can be doing a potential 13 attacks in combat, all at 2 or 3 damage. So it really can blend through infantry like nobody's business. We also get to see Be'lakor himself, and he, like the Keeper, is also toughness 10 with 18 wounds. He still has his 4-up invuln, which you will be using 100% of the time because it's the same as his armor save, but he, like Guilliman and Abaddon, has the same style of choice when it comes to his auras. This rule for him, Shadow Form, lets him either mean enemy units can't shoot at friendly units within 6 inches unless they're within 18 inches, which is just bonkers powerful in turn 1. That is wreathed in shadows. The Pall of Despair is another one, and this means that enemy units within 6 inches of Be'lakor that are half strength or below have to take a battle shock test, so you can really do this mass rout of the enemy by just flying up into the center of their lines and just obliterating all of their weakened units with a load of battle shock tests. And then Shadow Lord gives you the standard reroll leadership and battle shock that we have seen on people like Guilliman and Abaddon. So there's no rerolls to hit in melee or anything like that. There's no overtly boosting your damage auras from Be'lakor, but I do think he has some incredibly powerful buffs. I think Wreathed in Shadow is going to be insane for a turn 1 aura to have up. Having all your key important units almost completely safe from enemy shooting is just going to be an absolute godsend. And then Shadow Lord and Pall of Despair can be equally useful depending on where Be'lakor is and how the battle is going. So I think you really will be mixing these up quite a lot and going between all three of them potentially as the game progresses. He also has the Dark Master ability, which is another fantastic aura. A 6-inch area around Be'lakor is considered to be under the Shadow of Chaos. So he can fly up, and if he has Pall of Despair up, he can force a load of battle shock tests at -1, and for all that fail, it will be D3 mortal wounds on those units. So it is a crazy powerful combination that he can do there, and it also gives you that really nice bubble of bonus for your tests, as well as potentially respawning a few models as they are huddled up around him. So I do think that keeping at least a couple of battle line units castled up around Be'lakor does sound like a pretty valid strategy as we go into 10th edition. On the damage output front, he also has a very nice 18-inch psychic ranged attack, with Betraying Shades doing either 9 or 12 attacks at strength 5 or 6, and -2 or -3 AP with 1 damage. It also has Devastating Wounds for those extra mortals on wound rolls of 6. The buffed version is hazardous, so he can hurt himself, but 12 attacks at that strength 6 -3 AP profile I think is probably going to massively outweigh any damage you could do to yourself, I would have thought. And then in melee, his blade is also really good, the Blade of Shadows. It has another dual profile. It can either do 6 attacks at strength 14, -4 AP and D6 plus 1 damage with lethal strikes, whilst in the sweep profile, he has 14 attacks at strength 8, -3 AP and 1 damage. So he's not the killiest model we've seen so far, but it is still a fairly good profile all told, and considering all the other buffs that he brings to your army, I really can see Be'lakor once again being an almost must-take in a lot of demon lists. On the actual weapon profiles front, we do get told a bit more about the extra attacks ability that was shown with the Keeper, and we get shown another example, the Bile Blade, which gives an extra 3 attacks at strength 6, -2 AP, 2 damage, to a Great Unclean One. But the big thing in this section is the real melee powerhouse that we all love, and that is of course Skarbrand. And he is still super killy. His axes Slaughter and Carnage are still just as devastating as ever, and with them he has got 8 attacks at strength 16, -4 AP and a flat 6 damage. So he can easily one-shot the new Land Raider, and even against the new Baneblade that we saw yesterday, he manages a whopping 22 damage, so he nearly kills it in one go. If he's got any ways to get an extra attack or boost his damage output even in the slightest, maybe even just a single command point style reroll if that is still a thing, he does seem very capable of just one-shotting a Baneblade too. He can also sweep with the axes, getting 16 strength 8 attacks, and these are still 2 damage, so he can still very reliably chop his way out of a squad of intercessors that may be trying to bog him down. But I do think that his strike profile is the one you really want to be using as much as possible. It is arguably one of the most impressive stat lines for a weapon that we've seen so far in these previews, and it really is going to make him just an absolute terror on the battlefield. Finally, of course, we also get to see a stratagem. Corrupt Real Space is a very cool 1 CP stratagem that basically lets you corrupt an objective, and like the super objective secured we've seen on a few things, allows you to grab an objective and then move off of it and still keep it under your control until an enemy subsequently takes it. But on top of that, it also then starts to emanate a 6-inch aura of the Shadow of Chaos, so you can really easily spread this buff to your army ability, all over the board, or at least all around the objectives. And even if you don't have control of, say, half the objectives in your opponent's deployment, you can still potentially get some Shadow of Chaos over there just to help debuff the enemy and potentially boost your troops a little bit as well. So this is a very strong, very cheap for 1 CP stratagem that I can imagine being used quite often just to try and, force an enemy in their backfield to try and fail a key battle shock, or just bring a few more of your models back as you are trying to fight your way through onto the enemy side of the table. I think all in all, I just love every single one of these rules. They are so fluffy and thematic and fun for the demons, and they don't seem totally OP in any way, although I will admit a 6-inch deep strike is very, very strong. But I just think in general, these rules are going to make playing with demons, as well as playing against demons, such a different experience compared to some of the other factions that we've seen previewed in 10th so far. It really does, as I said, feel like they are actually embracing this new edition and playing the new edition in a way that some other factions we've seen aren't doing yet. This isn't just a rehashed 9th edition book. This is all totally new, and it is all utterly, utterly cool. But as always, I would really love to know what you think of these demon rules. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do like and subscribe for more Warhammer content from me, but until next time, I'll catch you later, guys.